All right, Dave, we're talking about Roman education today.
Okay.
And Marrou brings up one of these tropes that I think really irritates
Yes.
you, and that's of the gentleman farmer, right? Don't
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, how do you feel about the concept of the gentleman farmer
Well-
and it being central to kind of the ideal Romanness? Yeah.
Well, the words considered in isolation,
Yes.
as distinct one from another, gentleman and farmer.
Yeah.
I like those ideas a lot.
Okay.
I'd like to be a gentleman. I'm in favor of farmers.
Yes.
But if you're talking about are you trying to push my buttons?
I am a little bit.
If you're talking about the kind of, we won't mention Mr. Barry, and the hobby farming with the little plastic cows and
Yes.
the little plastic horses, and everyone has 80 acres and a mule and no running water.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of that.
I understand.
Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 216 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. I'm down here in the vomitorium, Parnassus Central, and I'm here with my good friend and excellent co-host, Dr. David C. Noe. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I have to confess a little bit of irritation.
Oh, really?
A little bit of morositas.
I can't say I'm surprised, but go on.
A little more than normal.
Really?
Yeah, recently I was engaged in a conversation with a friend.
Yeah.
And we were trying to workshop
Yeah.
a potential bit for this little podcast we record.
Oh, really?
And he was quite resistant to the whole endeavor.
Really? I think I was there for this conversation, being the other person in
Yes.
it, and I would say I wasn't wholly resistant. I wanted to,
Okay.
I'm aiming for quality.
You have high standards?
I have very high standards,
Okay.
especially when it comes to these bits.
I've seen the inside of your vehicle.
I don't have high standards for
no comment.
for lots of things.
But you wanted to refine the bit.
Yeah.
Bit by bit, you might say.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I think we're going to get there. And
All right.
You can set your irritation aside. Maybe we can drop it on our poor audience next time.
Maybe in 217.
Yes.
I thought it had some real potential.
I think, and now that...
It had the pop lyric build up.
Yeah?
It had the unbelievably droll punchline.
Yes.
But you were worried that it wouldn't really fit in terms of plausibility.
I think we needed to kind of work out the plot and the context out a little bit better, and I think we can get there. We're just not ready right now.
All right.
That's all.
So you just don't want to release. I mean, the person in the hypothetical story doesn't want to release this on an unsuspecting audience before proper measures have been taken.
Exactly. It just needs to be polished a little bit and some of the rougher edges sanded off. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
All right.
Does that make you feel a little bit better?
A little bit.
Okay.
How are you feeling?
I'm doing all right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my family, not myself, are on spring break now.
Oh.
Right. And
So you're working.
I'm working.
Taking care of business, but they're breaking.
They're breaking, and as you just witnessed, I'm already getting calls from my on-break children complaining about there's not enough food in the house.
It's Friday,
Right.
so they have begun,
right.
and they're going to break all next week.
Yeah.
But they're calling you to say, Dad, there's nothing to eat.
It's the end of the week, right? Grocery run is
Okay.
tomorrow.
Did you tell them check the couch cushions?
My son called and said, "Where's the car?" Because he wants to use it to
But
go
does
get
he-
something to eat.
Is he legal age to drive?
Oh yes, he's
Okay.
he's well capable.
This
of
is
doing
the eldest child. then.
Yes.
Okay. What did you tell him?
I told him I said I'll be home at 2:30. You can scrounge around
Right.
until then.
Maybe there's a stray Ritz or maybe one of those goldfish crackers.
Yeah.
In the cushion couches.
Yeah, exactly.
Couch,
right.
couch cushions.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say.
And he's right. I mean, the stores
Yeah.
are depleted as they
Yeah.
always are on Friday, but I mean, with a little looking around, you can find something.
Sure.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about classics, may I digress?
Please.
It just occurs to me for the first time that those are odd snacks.
What?
The goldfish crackers.
Yeah.
Because they don't taste like fish,
No.
but they're a cracker in the shape of an animal. This is
true.
kind of a genre, isn't it?
Well, it's animal crackers.
yes, but
too.
those are sweet. These are savory.
Yeah, that's true.
I wonder if anyone has ever done something else like that.
Like another savory,
Correct.
animal-shaped treat.
That's right. Like if your Chex Mix is shaped like armadillos or something.
Well, they do have like chicken nuggets that are shaped
Yes.
like dinosaurs.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's an uncomfortable pairing, I would say. Because while most things taste like chicken, how do we know the dinosaurs do?
Right, exactly. I guess when you're a 4-year-old child, your thought process doesn't go that far along.
It's just the novelty of the shape.
Exactly. I think it's supposed to be fun to try to get your kids to actually eat something.
Eat something that looks weird.
Yeah.
So at what age does that, speaking classically, does that sort of practice discontinue?
Well, it's weird. I think it kind of goes in the opposite direction. I think a lot of people, they would not, if they're like fish, they don't want to eat a fish there with the head on.
They don't want a fish that looks like a fish.
Right. They don't want a hamburger that looks like a cow.
No,
right?
they don't.
No.
They want it disguised.
Yes.
But if we were consistent from childhood,
right,
kind of in the way that we might get educated,
yeah,
there's the classical reference.
There we go.
As we got older,
yeah,
we would want the things that we're eating to continue to look like what they represent.
Right. So the question is, where does the flip happen?
Yes, that's really interesting. So what are we talking about today, Jeff?
I want to talk more about animal-shaped savory foods,
do?
but I'm going to set it aside.
Okay.
Because we are back into Mr. Marrou's text on ancient education.
Now, how are you feeling, Jeff, when you approached the Marrou, right, for this particular portion? I'd like to remind the readers, I'm sure they're taking careful notes, the listeners, it's part 3, entitled Classical Education and Rome, part 3. Chapter 1 of part 3, The Old Roman Education. Mm-hmm. How were you feeling when you first approached it?
Well, I mean, I have not made a secret of some of my frustrations with Marrou, and I thought,
the Lamb translation,
right?
The George Lamb translation,
right.
Shaped like a lamb.
Maybe that would have gotten me a little bit more enthusiastic about it. But I've had frustrations with the translation, and I learned a ton from the first sections we've done.
First 84 episodes.
A lot of it started to feel a bit repetitive to me. Yeah. So I was excited about a kind of a pivot. Right. And Marrou did not let me down. I thought this was a fascinating chapter. It was. This was great.
Since you asked, I had the exact same experience. Uh-huh. I sat down to read it, doing our laborious show prep. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what are we going to say? What's Jeff going to think? Are the fans going to dig it, as the kids say? This was a riveting chapter.
It really was.
It filled in a lot of the gaps in my knowledge. And I mean, let's be honest, we're old guys. Mm-hmm. We could be the old Romans mentioned in the chapter.
Yeah.
Been studying this a long time. And yet I learned a lot from this chapter.
Same here.
It's always very satisfying.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Before we dig in,
yeah,
we have not a shout out and not a corrigendum, but I guess this would fall under a new category, which is like co-host roasting.
Uh-huh.
You ready for this?
Am I the one being roasted? I'm guessing.
What did you think?
Okay, all right. Okay, let's get this over with.
Okay, well, I don't think it's necessarily a roast.
Okay.
The co-host roast. This is from the Wall Street Journal, March 5, 2026. You've got it there in your script.
Okay.
Eben Shapiro writes, here's the headline. AI-generated writing is everywhere, and it's still easy to spot for now. Says Mr. Shapiro, which AI bot reveals itself by sounding like a corporate intern, which comes across like a nervous student? I asked the chat bots, and here's what they said. We are drowning in a sea of abysmal, artificially generated prose. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's seeping into inboxes, infecting publications, and ruining the internet once again. A favorite futurist parlor game involves estimating the percentage of online content currently generated by machines. 40%? 90%? In the not-too-distant future? Pick a number. Now, can you start reading there in the third open paragraph?
Sure.
Okay.
The first dead giveaway is vocabulary. A chatbot writes like a panicked college freshman trying to sound profound.
Have you experienced that before, Jeff?
Yes. This is, the AI written stuff now just leaps out at me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's so, but I'm nervous about where this is going. It's going to be less so.
Are your students handing in any AI stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and there's they turned it in online, and there's there's an AI detector.
A percentage,
right?
Right.
But I've heard there's issues with those. But I got one the other day, and it was AI generation. The percentage 100%.
I couldn't know that.
I don't know. It was, it was knowing the student and then reading what I was reading was so obvious.
Yeah. I have written things and entered them in there. I even actually entered something that was AI generated, and it said something like 10% likelihood.
10, yeah, oh, really?
When it actually was AI.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue, please.
Wow. If a memo about a software update uses words like delve, tapestry, beacon, or myriad, a machine wrote it.
Here-
I use those words.
Do you?
I do. I use delve and
Well,
myriad.
I like to delve through a tapestry looking for a myriad of beacons.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's like your son searching through the couch cushions
Right.
for the stray cracker.
exactly right.
He's delving through the tapestry.
Right.
And then here comes the punchline, the roast your co-host.
It says, my own favorite LLM word is liminal,
Ah, there we go.
which ChatGPT, when pressed, claims the culture started overusing first. So touchy.
Yeah. So LLM, I think, stands for large language model.
Oh, okay. I was just going to
yeah,
ask.
I think that's what it stands for.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's an alternative candies, right? We've got M&Ms.
Yes.
Now we're going to have
LLMs. Yeah, right.
There's a business idea.
But the word liminal apparently is an AI-generated giveaway.
It is an AI-generated giveaway, which leads me to this important question.
Yes.
Has my co-host for the last 215 episodes actually been an AI chatbot?
I am a hologram.
Because you've been spewing liminal from day one.
Right. I was using liminal before there was AI.
Before it was
so
cool.
I think they stole it from me.
Yeah. You were country when country wasn't cool.
That's
you might say.
right. Exactly right.
So the culture is responsible for using liminal, but I would say it's your faithfulness to that term and all that it entails, which has registered it in the lexicon.
Okay. All right.
It's you.
It's me.
You've been driving
I
it.
single-handedly
That's
drove this.
right.
All right.
And now it's been picked up by the AIs, and it's a dead giveaway.
Yeah. I still don't like it though. They're going to ruin it. Right.
Yeah, they're going to ruin liminal.
They're going to ruin liminal. It's going to be this liminal was my indie band. Now the indie band has gone global.
I
and I
see.
can't. They're not cool anymore.
It's all commercial.
It's all commercial.
It's not actually about the liminality anymore.
It is exactly. They're really losing sight
Okay.
of the liminality.
Well,
part
so
of it.
that's the new segment, you might say.
All right.
Not the core agendum, but the roast the co-host.
Okay.
And now we move on to the actual content.
Dave, get us started a little bit.
Okay.
You want to read something right from the chapter?
Yes, I would.
Let's do it.
Right at the very beginning, the old Roman education. Says Marrou, before we can embark on any study of Roman education, we have to go back a little.
No.
Chronologically, perhaps not as far back as 753 BC.
Okay,
Why
good.
does that matter, Jeff?
Well, that's the founding date of Rome.
Yes, April 21, if memory serves.
Yes.
About 10 a.m. in the morning.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. Says Marrou, I don't suppose the reader will expect me to be as clever as Plutarch and describe the education that was current in the time of Romulus, but at least as far back as the 6th century. In the realm of ideas, we have to go back still further, for in its whole spiritual development, Rome lagged behind Greece by at least 2 centuries. On the whole, it evolved along similar lines, but it took more time over it, and the result was perhaps less far-reaching.
Now, one of the things I found really fascinating about this chapter was he kind of mildly sets it up here, is these very, very different kind of points of view when you compare Rome and Greece, right? And
That's right.
It reminds me of if a lot of my students, coming into the classes I teach, if they have a notion about these kinds of things, the notion is often the Romans just took stuff from the Greeks and
Yes.
just gave them different names. And one of the things I loved about this chapter was how he really kind of distinguishes what was kind of uniquely Roman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was so surprising to find out that what is uniquely Roman is just plain traditionalism.
Yeah.
That's how I read it, at least.
Right.
So even when they were claiming to catch up with the Greeks, as I'm sure we'll see in subsequent chapters,
Yeah.
they weren't really doing that at all.
Right.
They had an entirely different project in mind.
It did. And then even I would say that a kind of a flip side to that is, even when Roman education is ultimately subsumed by the Greek way and kind of,
Yes.
fully Hellenized, the ideal was still this old one.
Exactly.
And so while they're actually doing things in a Greek style, they're pretending
That's right.
that it's not about that at all.
Constant lip service to the old mores.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit here about what he says at the beginning of the second open chapter, because this is fascinating. Could you read the first sentence, please?
Yes. The difference between the Romans and the Greeks arose in the first place because two different stages of development were anachronistically brought into contact with each other. What is commonly known as, quote, Roman virtue was simply the moral outlook of the old city-state. To this, the Romans of the Republic times, hardy, unbending types hardly better than barbarians, remained loyal in contrast to the Greeks of the same time, men who were highly developed intellectually, highly civilized, perhaps a little over-civilized, though to me they do not seem degenerate so much as enfranchised, emancipated from the old totalitarian ideal and ethically at the personalist stage of the paideia.
Yeah. So to unpack that a little bit, I think what he's saying here is fascinating. We have these two systems that come into contact anachronistically. the Roman educational system and the Greek. The Romans of the Republic times, these Hardy and Bending, etc., they were still wedded to what Marrou says could be the old city-state.
Yeah.
So maybe Athens in the early 6th century, around the time of Solon, 590, 580. He doesn't really give a date, but I'm thinking about archaic Greece, where the city-state and fighting on behalf of the country is still the most important virtue.
Yes.
It dominates everything. Later on, he will distinguish how this is different for the Romans because they never wanted to be Homeric heroes. But at this stage of the development of his argument, he's saying the Romans held on to what you could compare to the old city-state, but the Greeks moved past that.
Yes.
They went on into the Hellenistic era, you might say.
Right.
But the Romans, they stuck.
Yeah, and I think another way you could say that or describe an aspect of that, it's the Romans kind of take this kind of the tribal identity of the old city-state, and then as the Roman project grows, it just kind of becomes bigger and bigger.
It expands,
but it remains tribal. He talks about how the Roman education wasn't geared towards producing Homeric warrior heroes. I mean, the Romans were very interested in military success, but it was about the group. Yes, it was about the state. That was the end goal.
Right, and there'll be some fascinating examples that he will give later. For example, in the lives of the Catos and the Publius Decius Mus, 3 guys of the same name.
Right.
It's phenomenal.
It is really cool. Yeah.
Right. So going a little bit further down here at the end of page 229, says Marrou, Roman civilization was not simply Greek civilization all over again.
That's exactly what I try to tell my students. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It was archaic in its own way. In the early centuries, it had grown up independently on the fringe of the Greek world and was only superficially affected by it. And insofar as anything of this primitive stage persisted, as it did, even after Latin culture had been more or less absorbed into the Hellenistic civilization, Rome continued to be opposed to Greece. So the idea is kind of, they managed to maintain this tribalism, almost bigotry, no matter how much opposition it received, and no matter how much they absorbed other cultures.
Right.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right? You take in other cultures, but you remain entirely myopic about your own.
Right. Yeah. And the Roman kind of stance towards Greece is it's kind of comes out in these weird kind of love-hate kinds of ways, right? And a lot of certainly kind of culturally and philosophically, there's kind of seems to be a chip on the shoulder, a lot of jealousy.
That's right.
But then there's also this kind of scoffing at that as being kind of weak,
right? So contemptuous of the artistic accomplishments that you can't rival, but you secretly try to. Here we're psychologizing a whole culture, but so is Marrou.
Right. Yeah.
And then you look down on it.
Yeah.
So the next section, a peasant people.
Yeah.
I had to do a couple double takes. The lighting wasn't good.
What did you read?
A pleasant people? That can't be the Romans.
No.
Right. So what is Marrou saying in this section? Because I found this fascinating.
I thought this, some of the language stuff I thought was
absolutely.
I had never heard of this
before.
how
come I never learned this?
But I mean, as we've talked about, it's come up a number of times about the kind of the Roman ideal of the countryside, right?
Right.
That's something that, even as kind of Rome the city grows into a sprawling urban supercenter, you even have poets like Virgil writing in Rome idealizing the bees. And right. But that goes way back to this kind of this notion of the hardworking, self-sufficient, practical peasant.
Yes.
That's the kind of the just the foundation of, I mean, not just education, but of so many aspects of the ancient Roman worldview.
And when it had nothing to do with reality, not even remotely close to reality, they stuck to it.
Yes.
That's the stunning part.
That's right.
And what does he say, Jeff, about the Etruscan influence on the early Romans?
Right. He writes, this rural character, which we were just mentioning here, might easily have been obliterated by the Etruscans, who turned Rome into a town, and a very busy town too. But the expulsion of the kings and the establishment of the Republic seems to have been a victory for the rural aristocracy over the urbanizing elements, and so to have consolidated the power of the original peasantry. This was maintained by the continual incursion of Italian families who were gradually integrated into the old nobility and bound it more and more closely to the soil, preventing it from becoming too urbanized. There were the Sabine elements, beginning with the Claudi in the 6th century, the Latins, Etruscans, Campanians, etc., etc.
So all these families that loomed large at the end of the Republic, 1st century, time of Augustus, they could trace their roots back to one of these indigenous peoples that were just vacuumed up in the Roman project.
Right.
You might say.
Right. But that rural ideal
Yes.
never goes away.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the next part, you were mentioning the language.
This is so interesting.
Yeah.
Would you read some?
I would. Yeah, I'd love to. Marrou says, this dominance of the rural element is to be found everywhere, in names, for instance. Latin patricians dropped compound names like Eteocles, which of course is a Greek name, or Dumnorix, which is a name of one of the Gallic chieftains, that the old Indo-European aristocracies had been so proud of, and the Romans developed a trianomina system instead, in which we can often see a reflection of the peasants' down-to-earth attitude. Unimaginative first names like Primus, Quintus, Decimus, Lucius, Manius, Marcus, born at dawn, born in the morning, born in March, that's Marcus, and realistic surnames recalling their work in the fields. Pilumnus, the guy that pounds corn.
The corn pounder. I love that one.
Piso, from pisere, to pound. Fabius, Lentulus, Cicero, which mean respectively the bean, the lentil, and the chickpea.
Now, this is fascinating because I knew that that Cicero was his name was like the chickpea, but I've always heard different explanations of where that came from. I never kind of this rural connection.
No, I had always heard it's because some ancestor had a prominent bump on his nose that resembled a chickpea.
Right.
Now that may be true, but this is much more plausible.
Yeah.
These are the survival of names like Smith, I suppose, right? Because at some point, someone in your family was a blacksmith or doing other kinds of smithing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's perhaps similar to that.
Yeah, but I never thought of the Roman names, as he puts it, as being unimaginative.
Correct.
Or deliberately simplified.
Well, I thought of that in terms of their so-called first names, like Tertius. Here's my third kid, Tertius. Quintus.
That's a little lazy.
Here's my fifth kid. But not in terms of the other names. I had never thought that.
Right.
Indeed, says Marrou, the whole Latin language seems like the language of peasants. I almost dropped the book at that point. I'd never considered that. So many of the words that later developed a wider meaning began by being technical agricultural terms. Litus, which we would know as happy, was first used to describe well-manured ground. Felix, also happy, the fertility of the soil. Syncerus, sincere or genuine, honey without beeswax. Frugi is the prophets. Egregious, a beast separated from the rest of the herd. So I knew that etymology, but I had never put it together, Jeff, that these are all agricultural in origin.
Yeah. And then this one where he goes on, like putare, which every intro Latin student knows means to think.
To think.
He says putare meant to prune, and then to mark a stick with notches, and then to calculate before it finally came to mean to think.
Yes.
That's so interesting.
It is interesting. So you will find under puto putar, like you were saying, things like reckon, suppose. So I knew that it had, of course, this, like you were saying, this part, component, but I didn't know it was connected to agriculture.
Right.
That is the stunning part.
Look, it's kind of its core meaning to prune. That's wild. Yeah.
So then we go on from that to a peasant. Well, maybe we shouldn't skip over the part about how the Roman villa was designed.
No, we got to read this.
Can you read a little bit of that?
Sure. So Marrou writes, in the same way, Roman building developed on the model of the peasant's primitive farmhouse. The centerpiece was a rectangular hut, which in time became the tablinum, the room of honor. At the front was the atrium, the old farmyard. It was never entirely covered in, so the atrium would have the open roof.
Yeah, the oculus at the top.
And they use it to collect water.
That's right.
At the back, the grand peristyle found in Pompeian houses was nothing more than the old kitchen garden.
That's funny.
Decked out with all the tricks of Hellenistic architecture.
Yeah.
That was brand new to me.
Yes.
I never thought about the development of the house. I was just talking in a class the other day about the magnificent villa of the papyri.
Yes.
Right? And to think of that magnificent peristyle as just an extension of the kitchen garden.
Yep.
That blew my mind.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I could have connected, I'm with you. The one thing I could have connected is that the name of the atrium, right, the walls were called that because it was blackened, because they used to have a fire, right, like to keep the place warm, and the soot would blacken the interior of the room. So that's a story I've told students very often. So that seemed like a holdover from a more primitive time.
Yeah.
But I would have said that the peristyle was entirely Hellenistic and Greek.
Yeah.
I didn't know, like you were saying, that it's just the kitchen garden from the old farmhouse but then let's add a few Hellenistic elements to make it look better.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating about the atrium. I mean, there's even the vocabulary is a holdover from something.
Yeah.
I never made that connection before. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So then that leads naturally in the next section to a peasant education.
Yeah.
Can you share some of that with us?
Sure.
Please?
This explains the highly original characteristics of the earliest Roman education. It was a peasant education adapted for an aristocracy. To understand its essentials, we have simply got to look at the way our own young village people are educated today.
Now, who are these village people that are being educated?
They
dancing and
singing YMCA,
headdress,
and making letter shapes with their arms.
Yeah, back to the shapes. I think maybe for Marrou, this is going to be a kind of a French peasant education prior to World War II.
Right.
The time he was growing up, that's probably what he's thinking of.
Remember that this book dates, I always forget.
We always do this. Late 50s, 58,
okay.
Something like that.
So he writes, the chief thing that education means to them is being initiated into a traditional way of life. As soon as a child begins to take notice, in all his games, for instance, he tries to imitate his elders' action, behavior, work. When he gets older, he takes his place amongst the grown-ups and sits there quiet and reserved, listening to the old ones talking about the rain and the fine weather and the day's work, about man and beast, and thus he grows into a whole body of wisdom. He begins to do odd jobs in the fields, goes along with the shepherd or the plowman, sometimes takes over their job from them, and feels mighty proud when he does so.
Yeah.
So education is kind of a peasant apprenticeship.
Yes. You know, this, in some ways, I'm probably guilty of romanticizing. In some ways, this resembles some of my upbringing.
Yeah, growing up on the farm,
yeah,
right?
in the rural setting. I just mentioned a couple of ways. Back in the days before they had what's called Roundup Ready beans.
Okay.
You heard of that before?
So these are beans you don't have to use the chemical Roundup on?
Actually, you can.
Okay.
So in the old days, if you were to spray,
if you were to
spray Roundup, this herbicide, it would kill not only the target plant, right, but the crop that you want to preserve.
Gotcha.
So you had to be very precise in your application of this particular herbicide.
So these are beans that are ready to receive the Roundup.
They can be sprayed with Roundup,
Gotcha.
and it won't hurt them. And the good consequence in terms of industrial farming is that you can just spray everything and only the weeds die because they're not resistant.
Gotcha.
So before those days, one of my childhood jobs, maybe one of the first important jobs I had, was to walk down the rows of the soybean fields hour after hour, day after day, with a little spray bottle and spray Roundup on the weeds.
Yeah.
Which is often volunteer corn. So this is the corn left over from the previous year.
Yeah.
Right? And so my job was to kill all the volunteers, you might say. But
Yeah. Now this is a little bit off topic, but did you ever have it in your mind, or your parents ever have it in mind that you were going to take over the farm, and you would carry this on?
No, probably not.
No,
because I had other interests.
Yeah, but you were never. Your dad never like pressured you.
Oh, definitely not.
Okay,
he almost went in the other direction. And while we're on the topic of talking about me, I think we should just mention to the audience how much this podcast has changed from the beginning.
Okay.
Because at the very beginning of the podcast, almost 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I would never have done this.
Done what?
Talked about myself or my background.
Okay.
It was all strictly literature.
Oh, yeah.
Now I've gotten to the point where...
We're barely talking about the topic.
Exactly. It's just a constant revelation of internal feelings and autobiographical experiences.
It's therapy.
You think so?
Yeah, I guess so.
You could rebuild our entire lives based on this podcast. Not that anybody would want to. But what struck me about what Marrou says, right, he begins to do odd jobs in the fields.
Yeah.
So I was never given an important task at that very young age.
Yes.
But I wanted to contribute. And to my mind, it was important. Another thing was, another task was in Michigan, unlike the good agricultural land down in central Illinois, northern Indiana, we have tons of rocks. Tons of rocks. Every time you plow up a new batch of rocks.
Yeah.
Well, these are very hard on equipment, and they're counterproductive, so they have to be removed. So my job was picking rocks out of the field. Yeah. It's exactly one of those things that Marrou describes, right? It's a peasant task. It's a peasant education.
Right. Another thing that struck me too is that so much in the Roman ideal is placed on virtue, right?
Yes.
So it's not just about learning the job from your father so you can carry on the work. Is that the work itself is imbued with a particular kind of discipline and virtue,
right?
And the two are
the harder the better.
The harder the better, right? And those two are intimately related, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So have you found, since we're talking about ourselves, opportunities like that for your sons? Some way to get them invested in good old-fashioned Roman virtue? Mow the lawn, shovel the sidewalk, paper the walls?
I mean, your description of I think in some ways, I'm not saying that farm work is easy, quite the opposite, but I think it's an easier transfer of that kind of thing, right? So, I'm a teacher, and so I don't have a family business to pass on, right? I mean, I do have my children do chores and that kind of thing, so I guess that broadly falls into this category, but it seems it's
vehicle
not
maintenance or
it's your turn to put the gas in the car,
right?
But as far as kind of what there is being described here, this seems to be much more kind of programmatic and foundational than getting my kids to do their own laundry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then he moves on, thank you, in the next section entitled The Custom of the Ancestors, to the very important concept of mos maiorum, right, which means custom of the ancestors.
Yes.
Yeah, the mores or the morals is from this, the mos maiorum. And maiorum means those who are older, but also those who are better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's the sense that we're in the Iron Age, and those who lived before us, our ancestors, they were better folk.
Yes. Yep.
And maybe, Jeff, you could just read that one little part at the bottom of page 231, where the Roman focus on tradition is contrasted with theognis in the old Greek perspective. Yes. So
Marrou writes, the early Greeks were not unfamiliar with this idea. We have come across it.
I'm sorry. What's the idea?
The idea of kind of the fundamental idea of the mos maiorum.
Oh, sorry.
The custom of the ancestors. We have come across it in Theognis, but it will be remembered that when he refers to, quote, the wisdom that he had learned from the best ones when he was still a child, he has a polemical purpose in mind, for he was a desperate conservative reacting violently against a new spirit. In Rome, tradition always had a much stronger position. It was always revered unquestioningly. There was something slightly contemptuous in any reference to res novae, innovations, and revolution. They all meant the same thing in Latin. The strength of Rome, wrote Cicero, echoing Ennius, is founded on her ancient customs as much as on the strength of her sons. This made me think of, in myth class, when we talk about like the goddess Hestia,
yes,
and her Roman counterpart Vesta,
right,
and how I try to make the point that the way those two cultures treated those goddesses with the same goddesses with the different names,
yes,
is I think indicative kind of who they were, right? So
can you say more? It's the goddess of the hearth,
the goddess of the hearth, right? So and then Marrou in this chapter goes on to talk about kind of the centrality of family, right? And not just the importance of family, but the the worship of one's ancestors, a kind of thing that you don't see. And has kind of a ready, kind of easy correlation in Greek culture.
That's a good point,
right? And so Vesta, as the goddess not just of the hearth, but the goddess of the home fires of Rome itself. Hestia amongst the Greeks doesn't play that kind of tribal, familial role.
Yeah, Hestia among the Greeks is more kind of in the bush leagues, you might say.
Exactly right.
Supporting character,
right? And grilling.
Okay,
right.
So then, education, family education, page 232. I had heard these ideas before, but I had never heard them synthesized this way, and so it was revelatory.
Yeah, you want to read a bit?
I do. The basis and backbone of this education, says Marrou, was the family. Legal historians love to emphasize the Roman family's strong constitution, the sovereign authority that was invested in the paterfamilias, the respect that was accorded to the mother, and nowhere is this more evident than in the matters of education. In the eyes of the Romans, the obvious place in which children should grow up and be educated was the family. Even under the empire, when it had been the custom for a long time to educate children together in schools, they still went on, as we can see in Quintilian, discussing the advantages and disadvantages of the two systems. And it was not always the old one of keeping the child at home, domi atque intra privatos padrietes, that is, at home and within the private walls. It was not always that one that was given up.
Yeah.
So even when they had stopped doing it altogether,
right,
they still held it as the ideal.
As the ideal, right.
So is that stubbornness? Is that inconsistency, hypocrisy? How would we describe such a thing?
I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of almost a kind of like Roman branding, right?
That's a good way to look at it.
We want to see ourselves. We kind of sell ourselves as this thing,
right?
But once you kind of open the door, peel back the layers, you see that we're really not that thing.
Have you ever owned a generic product? I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Right? I own a lot of generic products, like the soda that we drink here in the vomitorium. Although today we have the real thing.
We do have the real thing today.
It's
Yeah.
squirt, right? Not like burst or squeeze or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes people buy the generic
Yeah.
and then they relabel it. You know this happens. They relabel it with the name brand, knowing full well that it's not the authentic article.
Yeah.
But somehow it makes them enjoy it more.
Really?
You've never heard of this?
I haven't heard of it. I guess you're just trying to trick your brain.
Yeah, you can paint a swoosh on anything. Or someone who gets an old beater and puts when there used to be hood ornaments, right?
Yeah.
Puts like a Jaguar hood ornament.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And I would say it's kind of similar to what the Romans are doing.
Yeah.
We've adopted new technologies, but we really like the old, and we'll continue talking about it.
Yeah. This reminds me of years ago. This is something I still get routinely roasted about by my own family. Was years ago I bought a bag of supremely generic Halloween candy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you've heard of Bubblicious?
Yes.
Well, these came with little squares that were labeled Bubbo, B-U-B-O. And let me tell you, you could have wrapped that thing in 10 Bubblicious wrappers. There's no way it could trick your brain into thinking that.
It was just so bad.
It was so bad.
Huh. Yeah. I love this story about Coriolanus.
Oh, we too. Would you read this? This is great.
Well, I read the last one, but
Okay, I'll take
it starts with the mother's influence.
Yes, the
right?
mother's influence, and this too. I can kind of a distinctly Roman thing. I think
Yes.
this carries into modern Italian culture too.
Well, I don't know about that.
Right. Have you heard the term maminos?
Yes, I have.
These are the young men who are too old to be living at home, but they stick around because mom's
taking care of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I didn't want to just throw a whole culture under the bus, but
I'm happy to do that.
under the autobus.
Right. Back to Marrou. The mother's influence lasted a lifetime, hence the symbolic value of the famous tale that was handed down about Coriolanus. Coriolanus had revolted against Rome and was advancing upon the great city at the head of the Volsci. Ambassadors came out from the Roman people and pleaded with him, and they were followed by the city's priests. But despite their entreaties, Coriolanus remained inflexible. Finally, his mother appeared and upbraided him, and he yielded. I thought that was great.
It's so funny. I can just see it in my mind.
That's right, exactly.
Corey, she says.
Corey.
Grabs him by the ear. Mama.
And he's going, Mom, not in front of the Volsci.
Mom, there's ambassadors here.
Right. The ambassadors came, no good. The priest came,
But Mom shows up.
Mom shows up, and he folds immediately.
He folds. It's incredible.
It's so good.
Do you remember? I'm sure you do. This is a different culture. It's Greece. When we were in Greece in 2011, right?
Yes.
And we went to a place of authority. I'm not going to go into all of the details.
I remember it very well.
Yes, and our lovely tour guide, right, was with us.
Yes, Christiana
Dimitra,
yeah.
right? She was with us. And we were not getting any kind of help from the bureaucrats.
Right.
Although we're Americans, right? And we had anyway, and we're trying to get she walks in, and then she just commands all these men, and they fall in line.
Oh, my gosh.
And we say, Christiana, how did you do this? She said, Greeks listen to their mamas.
That's right, exactly. That was so fascinating to behold. I mean, I have no idea what she said. It was a rapid fire staccato,
right?
Greek, right?
A little bit angry, a little high pitched,
right? But you could just see these burly policemen fold.
Yeah, they fell into line immediately.
They did. Yes, they did. Yep.
And speaking about folding burly policemen,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Friends, listeners, I urge you to go to ratiocoffee.com/ad nauseam, because there you're going to see these wonderful, sleek, elite coffee machines. You got the flagship, which is the 8. You got the younger brother, the 6, and now this new half batch pour over, the 4, which fits nicely on your desktop. If you love your coffee, and I'm guessing a lot of you do, and you want to invest in your coffee game, go to ratiocoffee.com and find one of these machines. Dave, you've got the 8, right?
Yes, I've got the 4 also. I'm now brewing almost exclusively with the 4.
Yeah.
I made a half batch this morning. So I made a solid 2 cups, easily done, one touch perfection.
Yeah.
The coffee tastes outstanding.
Yeah.
Now, it is, of course, not cheap.
Nope.
But the great thing is I will never have to buy another coffee machine.
Yes, exactly.
And that gets expensive after a while, not to mention the bad taste.
Indeed. So do yourself a favor. Go to ratiocoffee.com/ad nauseam, and if you use this coupon code ANRatio2026, That will get you $20 off your entire order.
Up and at them. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the great folks at Hackett Publishing, with offices in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Indianapolis, Indiana. For now almost 55 years, Hackett has been offering fine publications from all over the classical library, you might say, the classical world. And these things are not just attractive and high-level scholarship; they're very affordable.
Yeah, I think that's the huge thing, right? My students love it when I order Hackett text for my classroom. It's very achievable. It does not punish your wallet. And we've used several translations.
That's right.
And text from Hackett on this episode.
Yeah,
and they've all been just of top quality.
Absolutely. So as we're going through this Marrou chapter, the audience doesn't know this, but each one of these pages, I'm looking at one right now, packed with footnotes.
Yeah.
Marrou's not just making things up. This one on page 233, 13 different footnotes, each one with a reference. Pliny, Cicero, Plutarch, Gellius, Suetonius, Nonius, etc. Almost every one of these authors you can find at Hackett.
Absolutely.
Build yourself a library. Go to hackettpublishing.com, Hackett. What do they need to enter, Jeff?
They need to enter this coupon code, which is AN2026. It's AN as an ad nauseum plus the current year.
And how many things do they get?
3.
Okay.
Yep. So you get, Dave, which one should we start with?
Oh, I would say they get the chance to build a great library.
Well, yeah, okay. Man, we're adding things. Yes, okay.
Was that 4?
I think there's 4 things
now. Oh, sorry.
Yes. It's just in terms of practicality,
yes.
they will get you free shipping and 20% off your entire order.
And they get to support this podcast.
That's important.
We would be very appreciative. Please check it out.
Dave, are you ready for art that truly speaks to your story?
I'm more than ready.
Excellent. Meet Della, a Tucson-based oil painter who captures the people, places, and moments you cherish with breathtaking detail. She's showcased her work in multiple galleries, illustrated books, and is often commissioned for standout projects. You can see her current works for sale at her website, dellachelpka.art.
How do I spell that?
You spell that DELLACHELPKA.art.
I got to spell art too?
You do have to spell it.
Okay.
You can do it.
All right.
So to find your inspiration, visit dellachelpka.art. And if you use this coupon code, APELLES,
APELLES.
That is correct. You can receive your ad nauseum discount of 10% off, and if you're within the 48 contiguous states, free shipping.
They're contiguous?
They are contiguous.
They touch one another at awkward borders?
They do, yes.
Okay. And Apelles, well, who is that?
That was the most famous painter from Antiquity, a favorite of Alexander the Great himself.
Was Alexander fond of him?
He was, very much so.
Okay.
Yep.
Check it out. All right, Jeff, as we pick it back up here, we need to finish this portion of Marrou on family education before we move on to education for public life.
Yes.
And there's a couple of really interesting points here. From the age of 7 onwards, the child ceased, as in Greece, to be entirely in the hands of the women, the mother or other relative. Mm-hmm. But in Rome, he came under his father. This is absolutely typical of the Roman system of teaching. The father was looked upon as the child's real teacher, and even later on, when there were proper teachers, they were still supposed to behave more or less like fathers. The girls tended to remain at home with their mothers, industriously spinning wool and doing the housework. This was still the custom when the austere Livia was bringing up Augustus's granddaughters. The boys went off with their father right into the curia, even when the Senate was sitting in secret, and so they saw all sides of the life ahead of them, learning from his precepts and still more from his example.
That's really interesting. I never imagined, the Senate being, bring your son to work day.
Yeah.
Right. Sitting there while they're having even these secret,
debating about how they're going to, make war against the Carthaginians.
Yeah.
They bring the 7-year-old in and let him sit there and soak it all up.
That is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It was, says Marrou, with a strong sense of duty that the Roman paterfamilias applied himself to his job as an educator. He was a very different figure from the careless and incompetent fathers who appear in the pages of Plato's Laches. There is an excellent chapter in Plutarch describing the care Cato the censor took over his son's education. Plutarch shows what an eagle eye he kept on his progress, how he taught his son all his subjects, and he emphasizes the gravity and the respect for the child that he showed throughout.
Yeah. So, he goes on to say about, Cato is perhaps an extreme example of
yes,
this, but
Cato, a reactionary.
Seeing his son as, a project that he can
Right.
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that stood out. But then I also was surprised by the quote here from Juvenal, which is Maxima debetur puero reverentia, which is the greatest respect is owed to the child.
Yeah.
So although they did kind of make them into projects, they didn't sacrifice the dignity of the child in the process,
Right.
or at least they claimed not to.
Right. That was the ideal.
Who knows what
Yep.
happened? You want to take us into the next part, education for public life?
Yes. When the boy was about 16, this home education came to an end. There was a ceremony to mark the beginning of the next stage. He took off his toga edged with purple and any other marks of childhood and put on the toga virilis. Instead, he was now a citizen. But he had not finished his education. There was his military service, and before that, usually a year spent in preparing for public life, the tirocinium fori.
Right.
So this is kind
A
of
year-long apprenticeship.
this would be your kind of your post-secondary education.
Your gap year.
Your gap year.
I think so.
I mean, a lot of cultures still around the world still have that expected military service.
Correct.
Korea, Germany. And,
Yes.
Right. So that's still a thing out there.
It is. It is a thing. You do your time.
Right.
But I think it was focused because it was your entree into public life.
Yeah.
So this mattered only for the families of means, aristocrats, and so
Exactly.
forth.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that Cicero is mentioned hereafter. Cicero, for instance, says Marrou, describes how his father put him under Quintus Mucius Scaevola Augur, the son-in-law of Laelius, one of the last survivors of the great generation of the Gracchi. Young Cicero went everywhere with him, not missing any opportunity that came his way to learn from him. Fier riquas tudeba meus prudentia doctior, which means something like, I was eager to become more learned based on his practical wisdom. This gentleman was a great lawyer, and it was through being present at his consultations that Cicero first began to study law, and later he paid it back, right, because he passed this on to several of his young friends, Caelius, Pansa, Hirtius, Dolabella.
Read a little bit more, just into the next paragraph, at least the next sentence.
Sure. Marrou says, theoretically, the tirocinium fori was supposed to end after a year, and the young Roman was supposed to go off to the army. But politics was far too serious a matter for it to come to an end as quickly as that. The young aristocrat went on following a successful politician around who might be his father, but was usually someone else. Cicero, for example, remained with Scaevola Augur until the old man's death, which occurred after 88, possibly in 84. And Cicero, who was born in 106, must have been wearing the toga virilis since 90 or 98. Even then, he did not consider his education to be complete, for he transferred himself to one of his first master's cousins, Scaevola Pontifex Maximus.
So again, it goes on as a kind of very deliberate apprenticeship rather than
Yes.
you're not attending a university or kind of it's not a group setting.
No, it's one-on-one instruction.
Yep.
Often within the setting of another group of people, but you're attached to an individual.
Yes.
There's no substitute for that, I don't think, by the way.
That's kind of, isn't that the still kind of the Oxford ideal?
So
The-
I'm told.
The tutor with the two T.
It's one-on-one or one-on-two, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Some of my graduate school classes were like that just based on low enrollment.
Yes. Oh, same with mine.
It wasn't the intention.
Right.
I'm sure that the department would have loved to have lots of students just packing the courses.
Right.
So it's bad for the long-term viability of such a project. It was very good for me
Yeah.
to have the individual attention of, one or two persons.
Yeah, exactly. No, I had the same experience. Yep. Let's go on into the next section, which Marrou titles The Roman Moral Ideal.
What does he have to say there, Jeff?
He says, when we come to examine the content of this old system of education, we find, in the first place, a moral ideal. The essential thing was the development of the child's or the young man's conscience, the inculcation of a rigid system of moral values, reliable reflexes, a particular way of life. On the whole, as I have said, it was the old city ideal, when meant sacrifice, renunciation, absolute devotion to the community, the state. It was the Greek ideal at the time of Calenus and Tertius.
Right.
So he's pointing out there is overlap with the Greek system throughout this, but that kind of slavishness to duty,
Right.
to sacrifice, or at least the ideal of it, and ultimately everything is done in service of the state. That's something very distinctly Roman.
And there's a big time lapse, right? Because Calenus and Tertius, these are archaic poets.
Right.
These are back into the 7th and 6th century. And Rome was going through this hundreds of years later.
Right. Exactly.
I guess it's the insularity of the two cultures.
Yeah.
Although they live very close together and they sometimes rub shoulders.
Right.
the rate of transfer of information and practice was very slow, I guess.
Right, and I think it's just some of those kind of indigenous things that you can never, they can never fully be uprooted.
That's correct. So on a Sunday afternoon, what do you usually eat? Pot roast?
No, actually, I'm scrounging around the cabinet like my son was.
That's a standard Dutch West Michigan sort of thing.
Yes, that is a tradition I am not passing on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. But I grew up with that.
Pot roast
the pot
and potatoes?
roast on Sunday? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking for an example of something that holds on when everything else has changed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. In my house, sadly, that's fallen by the wayside.
Well, I don't know about sad. I take it you're not a big fan of pot roast.
I love pot roast, but
do?
I'm too distracted to kind of prepare anything.
What kind of a paterfamilias are you?
It's not a very good one when it comes to putting things in the slow cooker.
A pot roast familias? Every episode needs at least one horrific pun.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Now, at the top of page 235, Marrou writes, the striking feature about the Roman ideal is that it was never questioned, neither in the tradition nor in the corporate memory is there the slightest trace of any rival that the city ideal had to overcome before it could establish itself. Nothing like the Homeric ideal of individual heroism, for instance, that had meant distinction and fame in ancient Greece. Not that the Roman soul was indifferent to glory, but its heroism never had any particular individual character. It was always strictly subordinated to the public good and public safety, as though this was its one aim.
Yes. So this immediately puts me in mind of the proper contrast between a hero like Odysseus and a hero like Aeneas, which I've always understood.
Yeah.
I've always understood that from the first time it was explained, right? Odysseus, he's the sole survivor, so that when we finally get him returning home to Ithaca, it's just one man on a raft.
Yes.
The entire fleet's gone. He's not, in one sense, a very good leader. Everybody's gone. Aeneas has no identity, some people say, because he's all about the greater good, right?
Yes.
Everywhere he shows up, sum pius Aeneas, I'm godly Aeneas, and here's my whole crew.
Right.
So I understood that, but Marrou really helps me understand how that principle is connected to something deeper in Roman culture.
Yes.
And how long after it had ceased to be a reality, it didn't cease as lip service.
Right.
They stuck to it.
They stuck to it. And then when he describes here Achilles as like a sulking traitor,
yes,
it really puts that in even starker contrast.
It does.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Yeah. So you want to move on then to the family ideal?
Yeah, you want to read a little bit here?
Sure. Marrou says, this brings us back to the dominance of the family in education. Roman culture always remained aristocratic. The old patricians were followed by a new nobilitas, just as eager to build up great family traditions. The hardening of the oligarchy in the 2nd century BC and the aristocratic reaction on the establishment of the empire had, through the centuries, the effect of strengthening this particular characteristic, which was another distinctively Latin feature as compared with Greek democracy. The young aristocrat was brought up to respect not only the national tradition, which all Romans shared in, but his own family traditions too. So, in other words, you were a Roman, but you were still a Metelli, or you were a Claudii, or you were a Julii,
right?
And you never let go of that,
right. And it's contrast that with the in some ways the very artificial construction of the Greek the Athenian democracy, where you had one of the things that was done was creating kind of these artificial tribes,
right? And
one of the reasons was to kind of sever your loyalty to your blood tribe, right? And so if you could subscribe to one of these new kind of artificial political tribes, it was more about kind of Athenian identity.
Yes.
Where in the Roman state, that kind of that blood tribal family identity never goes away.
Yes. The only kind of contemporary analog I could find is, because we live in such a democratic, maybe not even a republic, but a democratic kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Is devotion to sports teams.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if your whole family cheers for the Detroit Lions, sometimes you'll say, well, I'm just going to cheer for the Chicago Bears just because I want to, right?
Just to be kind of a thorn in the side?
Yes. You've known people like that.
Of course.
Right?
Right.
Maybe I'm sometimes a person like that.
Yeah.
But it is profoundly un-Roman, right? I don't think they could have ever calculated how that could be. Right?
Yeah.
Such a person is so antisocial; they're beneath contempt.
Right. Have you watched any of the March Madness at all?
It's basketball, right?
Basketball, yes, right. So I'm going to think that's a no.
But I know about the various alliterations.
Yes.
Like the Sweet 16.
Yes, in the Elite
The
Eight.
Elite 8, that doesn't really fit.
No.
The Final Four.
Final Four, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to mention that there's, you watch enough games, the same commercials start repeating.
Okay.
And there's one where the conceit is this young man is going to over to his girlfriend's house and meet the family for the first time. And they're going to watch
big moment.
They're going to watch basketball together. And he shows up with a Duke sweatshirt on.
Oh, the wrong sweatshirt.
And he realizes the family is UNC fans.
Uh-oh.
And he is
And those are rivals, I take it.
big time rivals. And so
Okay.
he is immediately ostracized, and the woman breaks up with him. So, but I mean,
So that's Roman.
that's very Roman.
for the family to break up.
Yes, exactly.
That's Roman.
Deeply tribal. Yep.
Yeah. Says Marrou, bottom of 235, each of the great Roman houses had its own more or less fixed attitude to life, its own way of reacting to circumstance. The Claudii were traditionally proud, the Junii inflexible, the Aelii tuberones. I laughed at that one because I was reminded about the peasant language.
Yeah, the
So
potatoes.
The tuberones are the potato heads.
Yeah.
The Aelii tuberones and the Quinctii were notoriously austere. In politics, a Cassius was expected to be democratic, and a Manlius to be aristocratic. Now, this was the telltale quote. Modern criticism has rather tended to fasten on these traditional attitudes as having been responsible for the way in which, throughout the history of the Republic, a certain kind of action is supposed to have been anticipated or repeated, sometimes more than once. My own opinion is that this is not quite so certain as it appears to be. There seems to be no reason why an ardent desire to conform to an ideal type of conduct should not have inspired individuals separated by several generations to repeat some great exploit hallowed by time. Now, that's a sophisticated argument, I think, that Marrou's making, Jeff. I think what he's saying is modern critics look at that and say, well, this is all made up. And he's saying, no, there's nothing inconsistent with thinking if you are the grandson of a great family, you would completely imbibe the spirit of that family.
Yeah.
And then you would look for an opportunity to repeat the heroic action that you've been dreaming about since you were a child.
Right. I think
that makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the Kennedys, right?
Oh, yes.
The weight of expectation
Right.
on every generation of going into being fabulously wealthy on the one hand, but also going
That's
into
right.
public service on the other.
Yes.
Right? So there was no other choice.
That's why RFK Jr. is our, what is he, Secretary of
Health.
Health and Human Services?
That's right. That's
I
right.
think so.
Yeah.
Because you got to give back.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but that stuff at the top of 236, I had not heard before of these particular kind of idiosyncrasies for particular families.
Yes,
there was a kind of a vibe about each of them.
So, like the Winkles are known to be liminal.
Very liminal.
The Noes are morose.
Yeah.
Family traits. We kind of scoff at that because we're so used to the notion of self-invention.
Yes, exactly.
In a democratic environment, right? But actually, we're very much influenced by where we've come from.
Yeah.
Can you give us the example of P. Decius Mus there?
Yes. Let us take an example. A heroic act known as a devotio was by tradition attributed to three different people named P. Decius Mus, the mouse, right?
Yes, that's right. And devotio, of course, is sacrificing yourself for the state.
Yes.
It's a kind of heroic suicide.
Exactly, right. The father in 340, the son in 295, and the grandson in 279 were all supposed to have secured victory in a decisive battle by vowing themselves, and with themselves the enemy army, to the infernal gods. The ancients themselves were not quite sure about the third sacrifice, but moderns go further and only admit one. So, but this also radically different from like Greek culture.
Oh, for sure.
Even the notion of like a noble suicide.
Right.
I think most Greeks would have recoiled at that. So
Yes.
You think about sometimes I've read Antiquity.
Right.
Framed as kind of a noble, that she goes as a noble suicide. I think that's a very Roman way of reading that play. I don't think that
interesting.
a Greek would have seen that as a kind of madness.
I think the play is wrongly named. It should be Creon.
Creon. Well, if you're talking about like who survives and learns,
Who's the tragic character?
right? It is indeed Creon.
Yes.
But I think like that kind of Roman self-sacrifice.
Correct.
I think that's something that is definitely kind of made its way into kind of modern Western culture. Something that we recognize.
Yes, it's a good point.
Yeah. But yeah, this sacrificing of the self,
Right.
on behalf of the state, right? That's
So
a very
there-
Roman thing.
Three individuals, grandfather, father, and son,
Who all did this?
they all did this
Yeah.
for the sake of the Roman army. And Marrou says the ancients weren't sure about the third one, but moderns deny the second one too. Then what does he say?
Now, I am not in a position to establish the historicity of any of these sacred acts of suicide, of course, but the words that Livy attributes to the second Decius, when he is preparing to follow his father's glorious example, seem to me to be psychologically true. Quote, "Why should I hesitate to follow the family destiny? It has fallen to our house to provide the sacrificial victim when our country is in danger." So there, in the quote, he suggests that he knows kind of the script that's been written for him.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why John Quincy Adams became president,
Yeah,
because his father had done it.
that's right.
So they were definitely imitating Roman custom
Indeed.
in that sort of thing. Let's go on to Roman piety.
Yes.
More a city and family matter than the Greek system, Roman education was possibly more religious too. Here again, we must realize the absence of anything behind the Latin tradition comparable to Homer's epic, which was so mature, so modern, and, in a sense, so irreligious. The Latin feeling for religion had something more naive about it, perhaps something more profound too. Rome never admitted anything that smacked of Machiavellianism into its public affairs, as Sparta did, for instance. So Machiavellianism, right, is Niccolo Machiavelli, the idea that realpolitik, right, a kind of hard-edged, unethical practice of politics, getting the goal,
Yes.
is acceptable and even honorable.
Yes, indeed.
Says Marrou, one ought to be ready to do anything for one's country, but not everything was permissible. That's the Spartan view. Nothing that went against justice or morality or the law. Consider, for example, the minute precautions that surrounded the ritual declaring war. This is in the Roman context. The fetial priests advanced to the enemy frontier and called upon the gods and the power of right to witness the justice of the Roman cause. Rome only made war to obtain her rightful due.
Right. And once again, to contrast with the Greeks, there is this notion, and what he's describing here is the Roman notion is that the gods, if not exactly are on our side,
Right.
there is, through ritual and balance, we can achieve kind of peace in heaven, which will translate to earth. Whereas in like a Greek going to war, you might say a prayer or a sacrifice to Ares, but more so that he would leave you alone.
Yes.
Right? You want the kind of
He
the
wouldn't
gods
cause
of war.
anything bad to happen
Exactly.
to
It's
you.
a very kind of negative way to do this,
Correct.
where the Romans are kind of inviting
Right.
a kind of a thumbs up
That's right.
from the powers that be.
Well, and then they had the practice with the Temple of Janus, right?
Yeah.
The doors are open, and then a spear is thrown into, such an interesting practice, thrown into the Temple of Janus at the statue of the god. That's the formal declaration of war,
Yes.
because war is vested with a heavy kind of religious sensibility.
Right.
The Greeks struck me as entirely more opportunistic,
Yes. Yeah.
in the sense that, well, here's an opportunity to get something, let's go to war.
Right. Exactly.
And like you might say, they pray to Ares, but it's more about personal protection or just leave me alone.
leave you alone, or to kind of to worship, play the gods' jealousies amongst themselves
That's
off
right.
each other.
Manipulative.
Right. It's very Machiavellian.
It's
right?
very, very interesting.
Now, Janus, you talk about a liminal god.
There you go.
All right, here we go.
There we go with the AI. Can you go to the last paragraph in this part on Roman piety before we move on to peasant virtues?
Yes, this kind of religion included a good deal of formalism. To be attentive to the will of the gods meant watching with the utmost care for all the signs, the flight of birds, the victim's entrails, the sweating bronze, which showed the goodwill of the gods or their mysterious anger. Piety meant essentially scrupulous observance of all the traditional rites. There was a rather sordid element of narrow self-interest in it, a calculating eye for returns.
Yeah.
So you have to get all of the
Correct.
all of the details, all of the stages perfectly correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was fascinated by this because this harkens back to my study of Cicero's On Divination,
Yeah.
where he says a number of really skeptical things about Roman religion and augury, really kind of disrespectful things.
Mm-hmm.
He says if you get an eagle on the left when you're performing a sacrifice, which is a bad sign,
Yes.
it's a bad omen, all you have to do is turn around. Now you've got the eagle on the right. It's good luck.
You got to do a quick pivot, though.
That's correct. But although there's a lot of that kind of casting aspersions on the formalism of Roman practice, time and again, Cicero affirms the legitimacy of it and the reverence you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
So it strikes a lot of people as just insincere.
Right.
How can you mock the religion that you so scrupulously practice?
Yeah, exactly.
I think Marrou's explanation here, really accounts for it.
Yeah.
They just never gave it up.
They never get another example of kind of holding on to the ideal, the foundation of it, but when it comes down to the details,
Right.
it's a little bit more messy.
That's right. Well, we're running low on time here.
Yeah.
We ought to say something about peasant virtues, maybe just one choice quote. I like this quote from Cato. By like it, I mean it's important. I don't really like the sentiment.
Okay.
When he's giving advice, right? A glance at the elder Cato's treatise on agriculture, this is page 238, is enough to show this permanent, single-minded determination not to waste anything. So the Romans were notoriously frugal. He says, give your slaves less to eat when they are ill. Don't waste your winter evenings or rainy days. Sell all your surplus and all your refuse. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
If you could sell your refuse. Sell your old chariots, your scrap iron, and then this is such cruel advice. Sell your slaves when they get too old or too ill.
Ooh, man.
So the Romans were consistent and in their frugality, and in this instance, they were consistently cruel.
Yeah, and again, also intensely practical.
Right.
Right. So there's no mention of a philosophy here. At all, right?
No ethics.
No.
Tell us what Marrou says about physical education, because if the listener remembers, we spent a lot of time in Marrou on pointing out that the gymnasium, right, the physical education of the Greeks was always front and center. The Romans had quite a different attitude.
Right, he writes, in Greece, physical education from the time of Homer onwards had tended to draw further and further away from its original military aim and to concentrate more and more on sport only, with plenty of performances and competitions. The old Romans would have none of this. Not that, being soldier farmers, they despised the body, but in this field, as in others, education was strictly utilitarian. Plutarch gives a list of things the elder Cato and his son taught: fencing, throwing the javelin, swordplay, vaulting, riding, the use of every kind of weapon, boxing, how to endure great cold and heat, how to swim across a cold, fast-flowing river. One of the poet's favorite pieces of description was that of young men doing their military exercises on the field of Mars, galloping around in the sun and the dust, and then plunging into the Tiber. So the Romans, we know, this made me think of, the Olympic Games go on
right
under the Roman Empire.
And maybe some Romans go to spectate, but they don't compete.
Right, exactly, right. And that makes that story about Nero going there to compete even, kind of doubly strange, right? But kind of just exercise for the sake of competition for sport only would have been unthinkable to a Roman. Yeah.
So he says explicitly, there was no sport as we understand it. The Latin ludus meant either training or a game. And so it's fascinating when Marrou on 239, the next page, talks about how that's contrasted with the Greek view. Could you read that portion, please?
Yes. Greek sport was based on the pure athletics of the palestra and the stadium. The Romans, on the other hand, always preferred the circus and the amphitheater. As regards the circus, riding was the favorite aristocratic sport, as it was in Greece. But in Rome, it was not so much a matter of racing as of armed march past, jumping, not unknown in Hellenistic Greece. The Tarentini specialized in it, and so on and so forth. Now, this reminds me
of... It's a parade.
It's a parade.
Is that what it is?
It reminds me of the... I think he even mentions this, that my least favorite part of the Aeneid is when Iulus leads the
Ludi Troiani,
the Trojan Games. Right?
These are the Shriners in their little motorcycles.
That's exactly what it is.
You don't like that.
I enjoyed riffing on it, but I can't say it's my favorite part of the epic.
It's not very exciting, but apparently the Romans had a nearly endless appetite for it.
Right, exactly.
They went on and on. Besides the circus, he says, there were the fights that went on in the amphitheater, and these, however extraordinary it may appear, were not confined to men who were professionals or slaves, or men condemned to death. Fencing was taught by the gladiators, and it was included in the most refined type of education, as we know from the case of the Emperor Titus. There were mock fights, which were probably not dangerous, but that was not all. For in the amphitheater, young men of the best families would be seen taking part in the hunts, venationes, i.e. fighting against wild animals, bears, and lions. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. That is.
So you're just kind of an average aristocrat, right? And you got John F. Kennedy Jr. is going to go into Madison Square Garden and fight a lion?
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. And so, he ends that paragraph by saying perhaps Commodus was not such an exceptional fellow after all.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if you've seen the movie Gladiator,
yes.
Commodus is portrayed, as he often is, as kind of a madman. And part of his madness is that he himself is down in the amphitheater doing these very kinds of things. And Marrou's suggesting, well, maybe that was just
the least mad part about him.
The least weird thing about him.
Exactly.
Right.
I think the portrayal by Joaquin Phoenix was the weirdest part about the whole thing. So finally, we finish up here with the Roman view of law, and maybe just one quick quote to capture that. We could say here, compared with the Greeks, the Roman aristocrats seem less like great overlords than like squires, gentlemen farmers. They did their best to teach their sons everything that a country gentleman should know. Besides husbandry, there was a Roman encyclopedic tradition, very different from Hippias's polymathy, consisting of practical applications, not objective curiosity. So they mastered law. In fact, the law of the 12 tables, says Marrou on 241, was learned by heart in childhood. Cicero could still remember this custom. Later, as we have seen, the young aristocrat received a genuinely professional training from an experienced practitioner when he was doing his tirocinium fori. He studied public law as well as private law, for a knowledge of rules and precedents was just as important in politics as in the law courts.
So I guess some of that Greek notion of education starts to creep in, but it is done in this very distinctly one-on-one Roman kind of way.
Yes.
Family-based, or at least, if not family, family friend.
Right.
Yep.
Where everything is sold and packaged under the name of traditionalism and a kind of studied archaism.
Yeah.
That's incredibly different from what we do today.
It's fascinating stuff.
Well, Jeff, that wraps it up, and I think it's time for us to get out of here. I don't know if anyone is banging on the door or anything like that.
It's actually pleasantly quiet.
Pleasantly quiet
on the other side of the door.
Maybe the yam enthusiasts.
I think you know what I think it is.
What is it?
Is where we're talking about education today,
right?
And it's spring break for so many people.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think they're all kind of on their way to Florida, or
so the angry denizens are going to go protest elsewhere.
Yes, exactly.
Leave
they're
us
going to
alone.
give us a break this week.
I would like that.
Yes. But Dave, before we go, help our listeners learn some Latin and Greek, would you?
Sure. You can go to latinperdiem.com and sign up for one of my courses. I have beginner Latin courses based on Hans Orberg's Lingua Latina per se illustrata. I also have advanced courses, what I call master classes, featuring such authors as Cicero on the De Natura Deorum, Theodore Beza, John Calvin, Desiderius Erasmus, Juvenal, a large selection of courses. If you don't want the intense pressure of having me ask you all kinds of grammatical questions, then you can just watch me teach other people, and it's very affordable, and I believe it is expert. Jeff, why are you laughing?
I think that I like that you're giving people the option.
Okay.
Right.
If you want to learn Greek, I can take you from
neophyte to erudite.
That's correct, using Moss method, and we got 4 modules. 3 are publicly available. These are 40 stories each, brilliant, beautiful Greek stories, well calibrated to the beginning student. Each module, are you ready for this, contains 40 homework exercises.
Yes.
I grade all of those by hand.
Your flunky that you
No, there's no flanky.
No flanky?
No flanky.
Excellent.
That's a deep cut. 6 quizzes and a midterm and final exam. This is, without a doubt, the most comprehensive Greek course available on the internet, self-paced.
Yeah.
And I believe my expertise can speak for itself. Check it out. Here's the coupon code 10+10 PLUS. Get 10% off your entire order.
Fantastic. Yes. We
Jeff,
got some people to thank.
I was going to ask, whom do we need to thank?
Mishka, our wonderful sound engineer, editor, does such a great job every week.
Yeah, she does the chopping and the cutting and the dicing and the splicing and the puree and so forth.
Exactly. We could not do this show without her. Jeff Sheets, this incredible guitarist, he's the one who's shredding and just kind of ripping it up. That's the guy you hear throughout the episode.
Yeah, the thrill seeker, and then the rush hour for the bumper music.
Yep.
Anyone else we need to thank? I think that about wraps it up.
I think if the listeners want a shout out, you want to get in touch with us, very easy to do. You can write to Dave at ad nauseam. What am I blanking? David@adnauseam.com.
Don't forget.
Get the V.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
holding up 2 fingers over here, and you're thinking 5?
What's going on?
What's he telling me?
Yeah.
Or contact Jeff. He's the gentle, pleasant one at adnauseam.com. Don't forget there is a V in the word ad nauseam.
Yep.
We got a little bit of a backlog of some listener correspondence. Going to get caught up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Really appreciate you all contacting us. We got no giveaways right now.
Not right now.
We're going to give away some more books soon.
Yep.
And what's on the menu for next week?
It's a solid TBD.
A TBD?
A TBD, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to work up a bit.
Yes, exactly.
And we're going to have a to be determined.
Yes.
But it's safe to say that whatever we deliver next time is going to be deeply classical. Is that right?
That is correct. Right?
All right.
So we got to deliver on this bit now.
Okay. And Jeff, I believe you have our gustatory parting shot. This one has something to do with grape nuts, if I'm not mistaken.
If only, Dave. But sadly, no. This is from A.A. Milne, the mind and pen behind the Winnie the Pooh.
A.A. Milne.
Yes.
Okay. So if I can just ask.
Yes.
Is this the guy whose stories feature cute characters but no plot?
Tell us how you really feel about these stories, Dave.
I think it's similar to another of my least favorite books.
Really? Okay.
Yes,
Go on.
Goodnight Moon.
Oh, okay. Goodbye plot?
Yeah, goodbye plot. Because in that child story, I believe the author feels the need to speak to the oatmeal.
Yes.
At one moment, right?
All kinds of inanimate objects.
Goodnight mush.
Right.
I think if you are reduced to apostrophizing oatmeal,
right,
you may not have a good storyline.
Well, I agree. The only person I like in that story is the old lady because she keeps saying shh. She wants the story to be done too.
That's right. But he says good night to her, which is a little ominous. Good night, old lady.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
It sounds like a threat.
It does sound a little bit threatening. Anyway, back to Milne.
Milne says, it is more fun to talk with someone who doesn't use long, difficult words, but rather short, easy words like, what about lunch?
There you go. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.